I hung up and turned off the phone. I sat in the living room armchair, the same one where Ryan used to fall asleep watching cartoons. The tears I had been holding back finally fell. I cried for the son I had lost, for the family I would never have, for all the years of humiliation I endured, thinking love could fix everything. But I also cried with relief. For the first time in years, I had defended my dignity. I had said enough, and although it hurt, although it broke my soul, I knew I had done the right thing. That night, Eleanor arrived with food. She sat silently beside me, holding my hand. "Do you think I did the right thing?" I asked. "You did what you should have done years ago, Stella. No one has the right to treat you like that, not even your own son." That night I slept better than I had in months, without a hidden recorder, without fear, without absurd rules stuck on the refrigerator. For the first time in years, the weekend passed in silence. Ryan didn't call. The phone remained dark, mocking me. But I knew the calm was just a waiting room for the storm. Monday morning, Mr. Morris picked me up for the preliminary hearing. I put on my best dress, the brown one George had given me on our last anniversary, and pulled my hair back in a neat bun. I wanted to look strong and dignified, not like the broken woman they tried to make me. The courthouse was downtown, an old building with echoing hallways. People waited on worn benches. Mr. Morris led me to a small room. "Breathe, Stella. Everything will go well," he said. At 9 a.m., we entered the courtroom. There they were. Ryan, in a suit, looking haggard, dark circles under his eyes. Vanessa, in a discreet black dress, hair tied back, minimal makeup, trying to appear vulnerable. I already knew her act. The judge read the charges: real estate fraud, document forgery, illegal use of property as mortgage collateral, dispossession. Their lawyer tried to call it a misunderstanding, a family dispute. Mr. Morris dismantled it all with precise evidence. The recordings of Vanessa threatening me, the fraudulent loan documents, the notary report on Bernard Higgins. "Your Honor," Mr. Morris said firmly, "my client is a 68-year-old woman who was systematically stripped of her assets by her own son and daughter-in-law. She invested $100,000 of her savings, believing she was building a family home. Instead, she was relegated to a utility room, forced to pay rent on her own land, and abandoned without a goodbye." Ryan wiped his tears. Vanessa remained cold, calculating. The judge looked grave. "Mr. Miller, is it true you used your mother's land as collateral without her explicit consent?" "Yes, Your Honor." "And you moved residence without informing her?" "Yes, but I declare the lawsuit admissible. Freeze on property and bank accounts remains. A criminal investigation is ordered against Mrs. Vanessa Sanchez. Next hearing in 30 days. Vanessa shouted, "This is unfair! That manipulative old woman tricked us!" "Order!" the judge barked. Outside the courtroom, Ryan caught up with me. He looked destroyed. "Mom, please, let's talk. This doesn't have to destroy our family," he pleaded. "You destroyed our family, Ryan, when you decided I didn't matter." It was Vanessa. She convinced me of everything. You agreed, and don't blame her. Vanessa stepped forward. "This isn't over. When we lose, you'll never see your grandson again." Matthew tightened. "He's not to blame for having a fraudulent mother and a cowardly father," I said firmly. "I won't let you use him as a weapon." Ryan intervened. Enough, both of you. I looked at him. Ryan, you are still in time to do the right thing. Testify, admit what you did, or keep sinking with her. He's my wife, he whispered. You gave me everything, Ryan. Does that mean nothing? I walked away with Mr. Morris. Behind me, I heard Vanessa's screams and Ryan's sobs. Chaos. Outside, the sun blazed like it didn't care about my heart. You did very well, Stella, Mr. Morris said. I know it hurts, but you are on the right side. Then my phone buzzed. Unknown number. A photo of Matthew playing with blocks, with a text. Your grandson, whom you'll never see again. Hope your revenge was worth it. Vanessa. I hugged George's watch and cried. For Matthew, for Ryan, for everything. But I didn't regret it. Sometimes love means letting go. Sometimes it means fighting, even if it hurts the soul. The following weeks were a mixture of relief and lingering tension. Every morning, I woke expecting regret to hit me like a wave, but it never did. Instead, I felt something I had almost forgotten. Peace. Small moments like the quiet in my condo or the smell of freshly brewed coffee became precious reminders that I had reclaimed my life. Mr. Morris kept me updated on every development. The investigation into Bernard revealed a shocking truth. He had falsified documents for at least 12 other families. Vanessa had been his accomplice in 3 of those cases, pocketing commissions for every referral. My own story, which had seemed so personal and private, was part of a much bigger pattern of deception. Stella, Mr. Morris said, one late afternoon, Ryan wants to meet with you. Just you two. No lawyers, no Vanessa. My first instinct was to refuse. My heart still ached at the thought of facing him, of looking into the eyes of the son who had betrayed me so deeply. But there was a part of me, a part that was still a mother, that needed to hear him, to know if any trace of the boy I had raised was left. We met at a neutral coffee shop, one of those impersonal places, full of people who had no idea about the drama unfolding between us. Ryan arrived 15 minutes late, beard scruffy, suit wrinkled, eyes shadowed by sleepless nights. He looked smaller somehow, diminished by guilt and fear. He sat across from me, silent, as if searching for words that wouldn't come. Mom, I began, but my voice caught. Speak, Ryan. That is why you came. He swallowed hard. You were right about everything. Vanessa lied to me from the start. About her debts, the previous frauds, her connection with Bernard. Nothing she told me was true. And when did you realize? 2 weeks ago, I found emails between her and Bernard. They planned everything before we even met. She studied me, Mom. She knew about the land you inherited from Dad before I even mentioned it. She sought me out deliberately. Hearing this should have given me satisfaction, some vindication. Instead, I felt a hollow sadness for my son, so naive, so manipulated, and yet still the boy I had loved with all my heart. My grandmother's heart. I whispered silently, thinking of Matthew. Ryan's eyes filled with tears. She's using him, Mom. She threatens not to let me see him if I testify in your favor. She wants to paint me as a negligent father, as if I allowed harm to come to him, when she barely lets me hold him. I know, I said softly, and that's why you have to do the right thing now. I am so sorry, Mom. Sorry for everything. Sorry for hurting you. Sorry for not standing up when she humiliated you. Sorry for everything." His voice broke, lost in sobs. Seeing my son cry, so broken and ashamed, tore at my heart. But I could not soften. Not yet. "Apologies are fine, Ryan," I said. "But I need more than words. Actions matter. Will you do what is right?" He nodded, tears streaming. "I'm going to testify. I'll tell the truth about everything. The fraud, Vanessa's manipulations, how she treated you. I've already asked for a divorce. Mr. Morris referred me to a lawyer for custody. I'll fight for Matthew, even if it's difficult." I reached across the table, taking his trembling, cold hand in mine. "Son, you did terrible things. You hurt me in ways I didn't even know were possible. But you are still my son. And if you face the truth, if you're willing to do what's right, we can try to rebuild. Can you accept that I forgive you?" "Forgive you? Mom, Forgiving takes time, Ryan. Trust takes even longer. But I am willing to try. On one condition. I will never again allow myself to be treated as I was. I will never accept crumbs of attention or hollow affection. I want to be your mother, not your servant. And I want you to learn from this what true love and courage really mean." He squeezed my hand, his own shaking violently. "I understand, Mom. I really do." 2 weeks later, the second hearing arrived. This time, Ryan sat on my side. His testimony was devastating. He described everything: how Vanessa manipulated him, how they planned to use the land, how I was relegated to the utility room and charged rent. Her lawyer tried to discredit him, but the evidence was overwhelming. Emails, falsified documents, neighbors' testimonies. The judge listened, increasingly severe, his face a mask of controlled anger. When the judge deliberated, it took barely 5 minutes. "I have seen many cases in my career," he said, "but this one is particularly painful. A mother stripped by her own family, treated as a nuisance on her own property. Vanessa Sanchez, your actions were deliberate, cruel, and illegal. Therefore, I rule in favor of Mrs. Stella Miller. Immediate return of $100,000 plus interest and damages. Mortgage loan nullified. Ownership of the construction returns to Mrs. Miller. Mrs. Sanchez will face criminal charges for fraud. And Mr. Miller," he glanced at Ryan, "because of your cooperation and genuine remorse, you will not face criminal charges, though you will pay a fine of $10,000. The gavel outside, Ryan hugged me. "Thank you, Mom, for giving me a chance. Now you have to prove I deserve it," he said, half smiling through tears. The months that followed were for rebuilding. Ryan moved to a small apartment, fought for joint custody, and won. Sundays became sacred. We rebuilt, slowly, carefully, honestly. The house built on my land was auctioned, and after debts and costs, I had $150,000. I sold the remaining land for $400,000. $550,000 in total. I bought a bright, small condo in a nice neighborhood. 2 bedrooms, a balcony with flowers, a view of a park. My space. Mine. I donated $50,000 to a foundation for elderly women who suffered family abuse. The rest I invested wisely, finally trusting real advice. One Sunday, Ryan arrived with Matthew. The boy ran to me, shouting, "Grandma!" I held him tight, overwhelmed by love. He showed me his dinosaur toy, naming it George after my late husband. Ryan explained he had been telling Matthew stories about his grandfather, about where he came from. That Sunday, Ryan and I sat on the balcony with coffee. I asked about Vanessa. Divorced, partial custody under supervision, facing criminal charges. I pity her, Mom. That silence makes you an accomplice. True love demands courage. And Mom, you are the strongest person I know. I touched his hand. I'm not strong, son. I just got tired of being weak. That's all. The weeks after the second hearing were an emotional roller coaster. Every Sunday, Ryan arrived with Matthew, and each visit reminded me that life, even after betrayal, could be steady and beautiful. Little Matthew ran around the condo, his laughter echoing through the rooms, while Ryan and I shared quiet moments on the balcony, talking about everything and nothing. These Sundays became a sacred ritual, a bridge slowly reconnecting what had been broken. I spent more time at home, organizing my condo exactly how I wanted it. I painted the walls a soft ivory, placing George's photo on the living room shelf beside Matthew's drawings. The balcony bloomed with geraniums and small pots of herbs, filling the air with fragrance every morning. Each corner of the condo reflected my choices, my freedom, my regained dignity. For the first time in decades, it felt like home, my home. One afternoon, Mr. Morris called with news. Stella, the authorities have completed their investigation. Bernard Higgins has received a 4-year sentence. I want to pay back a part of what I owe, not because I have to, but because it's right. I want to show Matthew and myself that honesty and responsibility matter. I blinked, surprised by the gesture. Over the next few months, Ryan started depositing $1,000 monthly, not as restitution alone, but as a symbol of his growth. To me, it wasn't about money. It was about accountability, redemption, and the first real step toward rebuilding trust. Life began to settle. I continued to host small gatherings with the support group of women I had formed. We shared stories, cried together, and celebrated the victories, no matter how small. It was cathartic to see other women find courage, to see them start reclaiming lives that had been stolen by family members. One lady, Rosa, told me she had filed a legal complaint against her son after hearing my story. Her courage was contagious, and I felt proud knowing Meanwhile, Ryan worked hard at his job, earning a promotion to regional manager. One Sunday, he arrived with the news. Mom, I got a raise. I want to start paying you, even if it's just a small amount. I can't replace the past, but I want to try. I hesitated, then nodded. If it's part of your healing, then yes, son. But don't think this changes everything instantly. Trust and forgiveness take time. Matthew continued to grow, his curiosity and laughter filling my condo. We read books together, built block towers, and played dinosaurs. One afternoon, he turned to me with wide eyes, holding his toy dinosaur. Grandma, this is George, right? Yes, my love, I said, smiling through tears. Just like Grandpa George in heaven, watching over us. Ryan and I shared quiet moments on the balcony, drinking coffee and talking about the past, the mistakes, and the lessons learned. How do you feel about Vanessa now? I asked gently. Pity, he said after a long pause. She grew up believing money and appearances were everything. She never learned about real love. She's her own victim in a way, Mom. But she's no longer our problem. My focus is Matthew now, and rebuilding what I lost with you. I nodded, feeling a sense of closure I hadn't known in years. Slowly, cautiously, we started to rebuild the bond between mother and son. A bond no longer hidden under fear, lies, or manipulation, but honest and open. As the months passed, I found joy in the little things. Sunday mornings with Matthew, quiet evenings on the balcony, cooking meals I could enjoy without fear or restriction. I attended more support group sessions, helping women navigate legal battles, offering guidance, and sharing my story as a testimony of resilience. On my 69th birthday, Ryan organized a small surprise at my condo. It wasn't extravagant, but it was perfect. Eleanor, my sister Connie, Patty with her daughters, neighbors, and women from the support group all came together to celebrate. Matthew ran to me, shouting, "Surprise, Grandma!" We picked a chocolate cake together, simple and heartfelt. In that moment, I realized something profound. I had lost money, lost years with my son, lost the illusion of a perfect family, but I had gained self-respect, authenticity, and freedom. I had survived, and more importantly, I had reclaimed my life. Ryan stayed to help me clean after the party. "Mom, can I ask something?" he said, hesitantly. "Of course, son." "Did you really forgive me?" I looked him in the eyes, washing the last plate. "Forgiveness is a process, Ryan. There are days when I see you with Matthew and feel everything is behind us. Other days, memories of the utility room hit me, and I still feel rage. But I choose to let go of resentment. Not for you, but for me. Forgiveness isn't forgetting. It's remembering without pain." Ryan nodded, tears in his eyes. "That's all I can ask." That night, I sat on my balcony, George's watch in my hands, listening to its constant tick-tock. I thought of the Stella who had answered that fateful call 2 years ago. The woman who had lived in a utility room, resigned, afraid. And I thought of the Stella now, the woman who had rebuilt her life, regained her dignity, and learned that true strength comes from setting boundaries, speaking the truth, and loving herself. The city lights stretched before me, millions of stories shimmering, and mine finally felt fully mine. After years of suffering, I had returned home, not to a house of bricks, but to a life I had built with courage, patience, and love. Spring had settled over the city, and with it, a sense of calm I hadn't felt in decades. The condo, once quiet and lonely, now hummed with life every Sunday. Matthew's laughter bounced off the walls as he zoomed around with his toy cars or perched on my lap, showing me his latest drawing. Ryan had started taking joint custody seriously, balancing work, parenting, and our slowly rebuilding relationship with a careful, almost reverent touch. One Saturday afternoon, I was arranging the balcony plants when my phone buzzed. It was a message from Vanessa. My first instinct was to ignore it, but curiosity, or maybe a trace of compassion, made me open it. "I want you to know I'm truly sorry for everything. I'm moving to Spain to start over, and I'll take good care of Matthew. I hope one day you can forgive me." I stared at the screen for a long moment, then put the phone down. "Forgiveness, wasn't instant, and it wasn't complete yet. But I could hope she would change, if only for Matthew's sake. The following Sunday, Ryan and Matthew arrived earlier than usual. Matthew ran straight to me, arms wide. "Grandma, look! I built a castle!" His little hands waved proudly over a tower of blocks, precarious but magnificent in a 3-year-old's imagination. I hugged him tightly, breathing in the scent of his hair and feeling an overwhelming rush of love. Ryan watched quietly from the balcony door. "He's growing so fast, Mom. I don't know if I can ever make up for lost time, but I'm trying." I smiled at him. "Trying is all I ask, son. That and honesty. Everything else will follow." Over the next months, life became a rhythm I hadn't known for years. Quiet mornings with coffee and the newspaper. Afternoons spent with Matthew reading stories, and evenings where slowly the wounds of betrayal began to fade. Not completely, but enough to let the light in. One evening, as we sat on the balcony watching the sunset, Ryan spoke quietly. "Mom, I've been thinking, I don't want Matthew to grow up with the fear of family betrayal, like I did. I want him to know where he comes from. I want him to know you and Grandpa George and the life you fought to protect." Tears filled my eyes. "That's all I ever wanted, Ryan." That's the gift we can give him. Love, honesty, and the knowledge that even when people fail you, you can rise again. Then came the news I had been waiting for silently. Vanessa's probation was complete, and she was leaving the country. Ryan told me with a mix of relief. The day of their departure arrived. At the airport, Vanessa looked different, simpler, calmer, almost human. She handed Matthew to me one last time. "Take care of him, Mrs. Miller. I regret everything." I nodded. "That's all that matters now." Matthew hugged me tightly, whispering, "Grandma, will you write me letters?" I smiled through tears. "Yes, my love. Every week. And we'll talk on video calls. You'll always know I'm here." Ryan stayed silent beside me, his hand brushing mine. I could see the pride and sorrow mingled in his eyes. "Mom, I know things will never be perfect, but maybe one day we can be a family again, in our own way." I took his hand firmly. "Normal families don't exist, Ryan. All families have scars, secrets, and battles. What matters is if we choose to heal together, and I'm willing." I've been for 2.5 years, waiting for you to understand what family really means. After the airport, we returned to the condo. Matthew slept in my arms, exhausted from the excitement, while Ryan and I shared a quiet coffee on the balcony. The city lights stretched below us, countless lives moving, changing, like ours. I realized that the story of my life, once stolen by greed and betrayal, was now mine to write. Every choice, every boundary, every act of courage had led to this moment. I kept George's pocket watch. The following months were a slow but steady reconstruction of life. My mornings began with sunlight streaming through the ivory curtains I had chosen myself. The aroma of fresh coffee filling the condo. Matthew's laughter was a constant soundtrack, echoing through every corner, reminding me of the joy that had been stolen from me and now returned in pieces, in his tiny hands, in his curious eyes. Ryan had fully embraced his role as a responsible father, balancing work and co-parenting with a careful attention that made me proud and cautious at the same time. He was different, older, wiser, carrying the weight of past mistakes. But I could see the spark of the boy who once loved unconditionally, the one I had nurtured despite his flaws. One afternoon, I received a call from the foundation where I had donated money. "Mrs. Miller," the coordinator said warmly, "we'd like you to." Many women are trapped in situations similar to yours. Your story could help them find the courage to fight back. I hesitated, speaking publicly about my pain, my humiliation, the betrayal of my own son. It felt almost impossible. But then I thought of all the Stellas who were still out there, invisible, silent, suffering. If my voice could give them strength, then fear and discomfort were small prices to pay. The talk was held in a bright community center. 40 women, mostly over 50, sat in the folding chairs, eyes wide with expectation. I shared everything: the betrayal, the utility room, the stolen land, the manipulation, the court battles, and finally, the slow reclamation of my life. Some cried openly, others nodded silently, and I realized how many of them had been silently counting on someone to show them it was never too late. Afterward, a woman approached me, her hands shaking. "I've been living with my daughter and son-in-law for 10 years, she whispered. "They treat me like I don't matter. I thought I had no choice." "There's always a choice," I said softly, taking her hands in mine. "It may not be easy. It may hurt. But your dignity is worth more than silence. You have the right to fight, to demand respect, to reclaim your life." In the months that followed, I gave 3 more talks, helped 2 women find lawyers, and started a small support group that met monthly in my condo. The condo, once quiet and lonely, now smelled of coffee, flowers, and hope. It was a sanctuary not just for me, but for all the Stellas who needed a space to begin again. Ryan and I continued to rebuild our relationship, slowly and honestly. Every Sunday, he arrived with Matthew, and we shared stories, laughter, and sometimes tears. The past was never fully gone, but the future was ours to shape. One day, Ryan handed me a small package. Inside was George's pocket watch, restored and gleaming. "I thought this belonged with you," he said quietly. "It's a piece of the past, but also a reminder of everything we survived." I held it in my hands, listening to the tick-tock, feeling the steady heartbeat of resilience. "Thank you, son," I whispered, "for finally understanding, for trying, for choosing to do the right thing." He smiled, but his eyes glistened with unshed tears. "No, Mom, thank you for teaching me that it's never too late to make things right, and for showing me what real courage looks like." That night, alone in my condo, I sat on the balcony with the city stretched out before me. Millions of lights, millions of stories, but my story finally was mine. I had learned that freedom had a price, but dignity had none. I had learned that true strength is not in never falling, but in rising again, no matter how broken. And I had learned that even after betrayal, loss, and pain. Love, careful, honest, courageous love, could rebuild what seemed impossible. The phone buzzed with a message from Rosa, one of the women in our support group. "Mrs. Miller, I started my legal case today. I felt brave because of you. Thank you." I smiled, feeling a warmth that filled the empty corners of the condo and my heart. Maybe that was the real victory. Not the money recovered, not the house, not even the regained relationship with Ryan. It was the knowledge that my pain had not been in vain, that my story could give light to others trapped in darkness. And as I looked at George's watch once more, I understood that the life I had fought so hard to reclaim, imperfect, fragile, yet entirely mine, was the true treasure. The months following the court victory passed in a rhythm I had never known. Quiet, intentional, and fully mine. I woke each morning to sunlight spilling through the white curtains, the soft scent of geraniums on the balcony, and the distant hum of the city. Every day, I reminded myself that this life, small, imperfect, and entirely my own, was the reward for the courage I had found deep within. Ryan adapted to his new reality as a father and a son, trying to rebuild trust. He moved into a modest apartment, close enough to visit Matthew every Sunday, yet far enough to leave our sanctuary untouched. Those Sundays became sacred. I watched Matthew grow in front of my eyes, the mischievous grin he inherited from his father, the inquisitive eyes that reminded me of Ryan at the same age, and the unstoppable curiosity that made me laugh like I hadn't laughed in years. One chilly morning, as Matthew and I built a tower of blocks, Ryan sat across from us with his coffee, eyes tired but attentive. "Mom," he began, hesitating, "I've been thinking about what you said that day at the cafe." I nodded. I had learned to listen, truly listen before responding. "I want to do more than apologize," he continued. "I want to fix what I broke. I know I can't return the years you lost, the trust that was shattered, or the money that was taken, but I want to show you I'm committed, truly committed, to making things right, to being the son you deserve and the father Matthew deserves." His sincerity struck me, and I felt a mixture of relief and guarded hope. "Ryan," I said softly, "actions matter more than words. You've already started by standing beside me in court, by taking responsibility, by being present for Matthew. That's what matters." Over the next few weeks, Ryan began depositing a monthly sum into my account. It wasn't a repayment of the full $100,000 lost, nor was it enough to restore the years we had missed. But each deposit was a gesture of accountability, a tangible recognition of his mistakes, and a step toward healing. More than money, it represented his willingness to change, to grow, to repair the bonds that had been frayed by lies and manipulation. Meanwhile, Vanessa's presence loomed like a shadow over the edges of our lives. She had been sentenced to 2 years of probation and a suspended prison sentence for fraud. Her reputation tarnished, her freedom restricted, and yet she still existed in our periphery, a reminder of how far deception could reach. Ryan, for his part, approached the situation with caution and wisdom. He was protective of Matthew, ensuring that every interaction with Vanessa was supervised and measured, guided by the court's mandates. One afternoon, As I sorted through a stack of letters from the support group, my phone rang. It was Patty, my sister-in-law. "Stella, did you see today's newspaper?" she asked, excitement in her voice. Curious, I searched online and found an article detailing the investigation into Bernard Higgins and other corrupt notaries. My case had sparked a larger movement. Several other families were now pursuing justice, thanks to the courage I had shown. The article ended with the line, "Mrs. Miller proved it is never too late to defend what is yours." My heart swelled with a quiet pride. What I had endured, what I had fought for, was not only mine anymore. It had become a beacon for others trapped in similar darkness. Ryan arrived that same evening with Matthew in tow. The boy ran straight into my arms, squealing with excitement. "Grandma, look at my dinosaur!" he shouted, holding up his toy. We laughed together, and I realized that these small moments, the laughter, the touch, the shared stories, were the true victories. That night, after Ryan and Matthew had left, I sat on the balcony, George's pocket watch in my hands. The constant tick-tock was a rhythm that reminded me of the passage of time, of resilience, and of the enduring power of dignity. I reflected on the Stella who had answered that first devastating call, the one who had lived quietly in a utility room, afraid to make a sound. I thought of the Stella who had stood in court, broken but defiant, refusing to be diminished any longer. And now, I looked at the Stella who had rebuilt everything from the ground up. My life, my home, my sense of self, and my family connections. I realized something profound. Freedom had a price, but dignity was priceless. True strength was not in avoiding pain, but in facing it, enduring it, and emerging on the other side, whole and self-assured. I understood that the real victory was not in reclaiming money or property, but in reclaiming my own life, my own voice, and my own power. Weeks later, I received an unexpected letter from the foundation. They invited me to speak at another community event, this time for a larger audience. Hesitant at first, I accepted. I thought of all the women like me, quiet, silenced, invisible, and knew that my story could give them hope, courage, and a roadmap for reclaiming their own lives. Standing in front of the audience, I felt the familiar mix of fear and determination. I spoke openly about betrayal, humiliation, and resilience. I shared the lessons learned. That silence enables abuse. That courage is not the absence of fear, but the resolve to act despite it. And that reclaiming one's dignity is worth every tear, every heartbreak, and every moment of struggle. When the session ended, women approached me with gratitude, tears in their eyes. One elderly lady whispered, "You gave me hope, Stella. I never realized I had a choice until today." I smiled, realizing that my fight had become more than personal. It was a light in the darkness for others, a chain reaction of empowerment and courage. As the weeks passed, Ryan continued to visit with Matthew. The boy's growth was a daily reminder of what mattered most: love, presence, and the courage to do what is right, even when it hurts. The condo, once a symbol of solitude, had become a sanctuary filled with laughter, life, and the quiet strength of survival. And for the first time in decades, I felt truly at home, not in a house of bricks and walls, but in a life I had reclaimed, a family I was rebuilding, and a spirit that could never again be silenced. Months passed, and life slowly settled into a new rhythm, one I had chosen for myself. The condo, small but bathed in sunlight, had become my sanctuary. Each corner reflected my tastes and decisions. Fresh flowers on the windowsill, carefully arranged books on the shelves, a photo of George beside one of Matthew, and little reminders that this space was entirely mine. No one dictated when I could cook, when I could sleep, or how I should live. For the first time in decades, I felt the simple joy of autonomy. Ryan was a constant presence now, though only on Sundays. Each visit with Matthew was a reminder of the fragile thread of trust we were rebuilding. He had grown into a cautious, yet attentive father, and I watched as he navigated his role with a mix of regret, dedication, and hope. Matthew's laughter, his tiny hands gripping mine, and the curiosity in his eyes brought warmth. Those visits were sacred. I cherished them, knowing how fragile this regained family bond had been. One afternoon, as Matthew built a tower of colorful blocks, Ryan sat across from us, coffee in hand, looking exhausted, yet resolute. "Mom," he began hesitantly, "I want to do more than just apologize. I want to make things right, not only for you, but for Matthew too." I looked at him, the weight of his sincerity heavy in the air. "Actions mean more than words, Ryan," I replied softly. "You've already begun. Standing with me in court, taking responsibility, and being present for Matthew, that matters more than anything else." Over the following weeks, Ryan began contributing a monthly sum to my account, not as repayment for the entire $100,000 lost, but as a symbol of accountability and recognition of the damage caused. It was more than money. It was a tangible representation of his commitment to repairing our relationship. Each deposit, no matter how small, was a step toward healing. Vanessa's shadow lingered faintly, a reminder of past betrayals. She had served her probation, moved in with her parents, and her legal record bore the consequences of her actions. Ryan approached her cautiously, ensuring that every encounter with Matthew was supervised, guided by the court's mandates. Her presence was now a measured factor in our lives. I felt a surge of pride and quiet satisfaction. What I had endured was no longer solely personal. It had become a beacon for others. My courage had created ripples, helping others trapped in darkness see a way forward. That evening, Ryan arrived with Matthew, who immediately ran into my arms. "Grandma, look at my dinosaur!" he shouted, holding it triumphantly. I laughed, the sound genuine and unrestrained. Moments like these, the laughter, the touch, the presence, were victories far greater than any money or property I had regained. After they left, I sat on the balcony with George's watch in my hands. The rhythmic tick-tock was grounding, a reminder of time, resilience, and the strength of dignity. I reflected on the Stella of 2 years ago, the woman silenced in a utility room, fearful to exist. I thought of the Stella who had faced her son and daughter-in-law in court, refusing to be diminished. Now I was Stella, the woman who had rebuilt her life, her family bonds, and her sense of self. I realized then that freedom had a price, but dignity was priceless. True strength lay not in avoiding pain, but in enduring it and emerging whole. The real victory was not money reclaimed or property regained. It was the reclamation of my life, my voice, and my agency. Weeks later, I received an invitation from the foundation to speak at a larger event. Hesitant at first, I accepted, thinking of all the women like me, silenced, trapped, and invisible. My story could give them hope, courage, and a path to reclaiming their own lives. Standing before the audience, I shared the pain, humiliation, and triumph of my journey. I spoke of betrayal, the lessons of courage, and the reclaiming of dignity. Tears welled in many eyes, and a woman whispered to me, "You've given me hope. I never realized I had a choice until today." I smiled, knowing my fight had become more than personal. It was now a light for others. Life continued quietly, but with purpose. Ryan remained a constant in Matthew's life, and our bond grew steadily. The condo, once a symbol of isolation, had become a space filled with laughter, love, and quiet strength. I felt at home in a way I never had before, not in the structure of a house, but in the life I had built, the family I was nurturing, and the self I had reclaimed. And for the first time in decades, I felt truly free. Spring arrived with a gentle warmth that seemed to mirror the calm settling into my life. The condo, now familiar and fully mine, felt like a sanctuary. I woke up to sunlight spilling through the curtains I had chosen myself, to the scent of coffee and geraniums, to a life shaped entirely by my choices. The past, the pain, betrayal, and loss was still there, but it no longer controlled me. I had learned to live with it without letting it define me. Ryan and Matthew were constant reminders of resilience and second chances. Every Sunday, Ryan arrived with Matthew in tow. The boy ran straight to me, his laughter filling the condo with a vibrancy I hadn't realized I'd missed. Each visit was a precious thread weaving our family back together, slowly, carefully, honestly. There were no illusions now, only effort, accountability, and love. One afternoon, Ryan sat across from me on the balcony, coffee in hand, his expression serious. "Mom, I wanted to tell you, Vanessa is leaving the country. She got a job in Spain, and the judge approved her move with Matthew. She met all her probation requirements and has been attending therapy regularly." My chest tightened. Relief mingled with sorrow. "And Matthew?" I asked quietly. Ryan took a deep breath. "He's going with her, but we'll have video calls, visits during vacations, and I'm ensuring everything is structured for his stability. She's starting over, far from the chaos she caused here. It's the best way for him to grow without being trapped in her lies." I nodded, accepting the bittersweet truth. Forgiveness was never easy, and letting go of Matthew, even temporarily, was another test of courage. "I hope this distance helps her grow," I said softly. "And for Matthew, I'll always be here, no matter where she takes him." The day Vanessa left, we went to the airport. She looked different, stripped of the vanity and manipulation, clothed simply, hair tied back, eyes wary yet sincere. She approached, Matthew's hand in hers. "Mrs. Miller," she began, faltering. I held up a hand. "Take care of him. That's all that matters now." She nodded. tears brimming, and said nothing more. Matthew waved his small hand repeatedly as they passed through security, his innocent eyes shining. Ryan stood by my side, silent, sharing the weight of that moment. My grandson was leaving, yet not forever. He would return on vacations, and one day he would decide for himself. Back at the condo, Ryan helped me settle, his hand lingering briefly on mine. "Mom, things will never be perfect. But do you think we can be a real family again? Not perfect, just ours?" I looked at him, the man who had once caused me pain and now fought for redemption. Normal families don't exist, Ryan. Everyone carries scars. What matters is if we're willing to heal together. "I've been willing," he said quietly, "for 2.5 years, waiting for you to guide me through what family really means." I smiled, the city stretching endlessly below us. The lights of millions of stories reflected a world full of struggles and triumphs. And I was just one of them, but now a woman fully in command of her story. Later, alone on the balcony, George's watch ticked steadily in my hands. Each tick was a heartbeat of resilience, a reminder of the road I had traveled, the battles I had won, and the life I had rebuilt from zero. I thought of the Stella of 2 years ago, trapped, silenced, diminished, and of the Stella I had become, a woman who set boundaries, claimed her space, and embraced her freedom. Weeks later, I received news from the support group. Rosa, one of the women I had encouraged, had filed a case against her abusive family. She wrote, "Mrs. Miller, your story gave me courage. Today, I started living again." I smiled, realizing the true victory wasn't only my reclaimed dignity, it was inspiring others to reclaim theirs too. As the months passed, Ryan continued to rebuild his life alongside Matthew, learning accountability, love, and the value of truth. I immersed myself in the support group, giving talks, mentoring women, and helping them navigate their struggles. Every shared story, every grateful message, every tear of relief reminded me that my pain had a purpose. On my 70th birthday, Ryan organized a small celebration in my condo. Friends, family, and women from the support group gathered. Matthew, now 3.5, ran toward me. The celebration wasn't extravagant. It was perfect because it was real. Surrounded by people who loved me genuinely, I realized I had gained far more than I had lost. Later that night, alone on the balcony, with George's watch in hand, I reflected on my journey. The fight, the betrayal, the court battles, the rebuilding of my relationship with Ryan and Matthew, it had all led to this: a life defined not by fear or others' control, but by my choices, my dignity, and my courage. Freedom, I understood, wasn't about a perfect house or a perfect family. It was about living authentically, embracing imperfection, setting limits, saying yes and no, and never allowing anyone to diminish your worth. It was about building a life that was entirely yours. And in that quiet moment, the city lights sparkling below, I knew I had finally returned home. Not to a house, but to myself,